Welcome back, everybody. While we're at it, what are we doing? Well, we got to put the intercooler in the car. And I'm going to use a junk old intercooler that I'm going to show you here in just a bit. What I want to do first is I want to get the old cylinder head, throw it back on there. The only thing it does is it puts the vacuum pump on there. It's just extra. How can I put this? Extra things to miss. So just in case we ever needed that cylinder head with that pump, I'm not saying it's going to be there, but just in case, we might as well make the pipe and make it once and not do it again. So that's kind of the reason why. And I'm just going to throw it back on and just going to just loosely have it in with a couple of head bolts, so it's not going to be bad. So let me pull off the alternator, and I'm going to mark this lifting hook so I can cut it in the back. So when I put everything back on it, I can bend it and then I can re-weld it, you know. At least that's what my plan is. Let's see how far we get through this before my plan changes. Because I never know, you know. I'm making this crap up as I go. But, all right, let's see what we can do. Here is a mark where on the back side is where I'm going to slice it straight across. Why did I do it this way? I use this. This is a 1/2 inch drive impact socket. You know, this is actually 1/2 inch. It's not a 13, but same thing. What it is just in case I need to pull that mount off, I need to have enough distance in between where this thing bends up and the socket to actually fit on. If you take a look at this, here's the 1/2 inch socket. The wall thickness is what you're looking at. Now this is a 1/4 inch drive. This is a snap-on, so it's relatively thin. But as you can see, this will easily fit on. But if this is all you have in your toolbox and you need to pull it out, it'll do it. That's the reason why I marked it where I did. Now I can pull this off, and then I can slice it on the back side, and I know that that socket will fit on this if I ever need to use it. So that's kind of just a tip the way I used it, you know, the way I'm doing it. Before I throw this thing on here, this is what I did. I just welded on a spacer basically to fix this. All I did was tack it on. The other side's not welded, as you can see. Actually, the weld didn't come out that bad. All I did was clean around and go all the way around, but I just cleaned it, tacked it on. What did I use? This was from the old 3B intake manifold. You see these studs on here, like that? There was run right, where was it? Right there. I chopped that one off. I didn't measure it. I just filed it to fit. Cleaned it up, threw it on. So now that mount for the alternator will go on there and it'll fit perfectly. Because I used the original mount with the original hook and everything on there, so I know it'll work. And this is not on. This is just temporary. But what it does is it gives me 3 points of contact. So when I bend the thing up, this all it's doing is pushing down. But these things will start. You know, these things won't pull out while this thing's pushing down because it's basically stopped. So that's kind of what I wanted to show you right there. You know, that's the reason why you keep pieces around, so you can grab things like that, you know, and throw them in just in case you need it. So, and I needed it. Let me just throw the rest of this thing. Oh, here. This is a better look. I don't think I really showed a lot of the intake manifold. I mean the exhaust manifold. But that's the exhaust manifold on what I built. Right there. That's how it all looks. So, I mean, I think it looks wicked cool. I wish we could see more of it without the intake manifold, but, you know, hey, what the hell. All right, yeah, let me throw this thing on there so I can put everything back on, and then we can put the intercooler in. here's a slit I made in the back. It's about almost 2/3 of the way through is where I want it. What will happen is when I bend it up straight, this thing will remain curved and the weld will be on the back. So it actually, hopefully it'll look pretty decent. Also, because I'm gonna bend this thing on the cylinder head, I want to put it right here, and I use a piece of TIG rod, and this is the length bolt that I can put in there. I want to use the maximum amount of bolt that I can get in there for the maximum amount of strength. So I don't, because these are the bolts right here that I use just to attach it. And that's just only because I can get them on and off really fast because they're small. Now I need one that's basically almost a third more the size to give me the most amount of threads to go into the head so it won't pull out when I'm bending it. That's a big thing. So let me go, I'll get some other bolts, put this back on, and then I will put the alternator back on, and then we can start putting the intercooler in. Right, let me show you what I'm going to use for an intercooler. See this? What happens when you take an Quattro and you drive it into a field with a tree? Well, you basically implant the top of the power steering pump pulley where it normally is located into an intercooler that you built. It's like, oh well, let's let this sucker home. But what is this? Well, this is back in the day, back in the late 90s. I built this intercooler. This is like my first one I ever put together, trying to think about how would be the easiest way to do it with the least amount of clamps and all this other stuff. What I did is I went to the junkyard. I got two Mitsubishi Stereo intercoolers, from the 8-valve turbo. And what it is I just had some pipe lying around. This right here, the end caps was just like a 3.5-inch aluminum pipe I picked up at the salvage yard. I cut it in half with a jigsaw, and I filed it to fit, and I made the plates, I filed them to fit. Same thing with all the hoses and the pipes and all this other stuff. I just filed them to fit, brought it to the welding shop, and they welded it up. It worked great. The hoses didn't pop off. It went fantastic until my incident. Whatever. But what I'm going to do is, seeing how these top fins are all damaged right there, I am going to cut off all of those top fins, take this plate right here and move it right down. Because the thing is, these fins are all self-contained. I should be able to weld it on the inside, on both sides, and I think it should be good. Then put the plates on it. And then I'm gonna cut this off also down here, just so I can use all the, how can I put this? All the parts that I have on the intercooler, I can utilize it for different parts of the intercooler and make it all work. That's what I'm trying. So I'm trying to recycle this old intercooler because I always thought it was pretty cool. I hung it up on the wall, so I took it down off the wall. Like the other one I showed you, the other one I built, that was after. And that was the one I hit at Mount Washington. It's like, I have a problem with intercoolers. Especially when they're sitting up front and trees get in the way. It's like, uh-oh. All right. Let's put this, let me get my stuff on and I'll start, cutting this thing up. Well, she'll fit like this. I got to move this pipe right here, the one on the driver's side, the passenger side down, so that thing comes out really nice. This thing I should be able to do a thing off to go a hose off of here. The way this bumper sits and everything, I think I'm going to change plans. One good thing about doing lots of different cars is that you look at other people's methods of doing things. I'm going to take a page out of Subaru's handbook. I am going to make mounts that bolt this intercooler to the motor. So when the motor moves, the hoses do not move. That way, you know, if the motor torques or whatever like this, the intercooler stays the same so the hoses won't blow off. You know what? I'm just going to give that a shot. Let's see if it works. Okay, here's our chopped up intercooler. Yes, it's a little bit worse for wear right about now, but it's okay, you know. What it is we have an intercooler core that, okay, if I build this whole thing and it actually works, but it's not that efficient, I'll go get another core. And I'll get another core, I'll chop the ends off, I'll put it on there and re-weld it. You know, that's what experimentation does, but at least I'll figure out exactly which way I want it. Now, what I need to do is I'm mounting this to the engine. So the relationship of the intercooler to the motor is always stationary, always in the same position. I will come to that when I start putting the ends on for the hose outlets, but first thing, in order to get it, you know, mounted to the engine, what am I going to use for mounts? Because the mounts have to be strong enough to allow this thing to not bend down like over a jump or anything like that. So you have to sit there and they have to be fairly strong, which I think I have to stop. The second thing is mounting the intercooler to the mounts. Mounting the intercooler to the mounts is not difficult, but you have to think about it because first thing is the mounts have to be isolators. So they don't, basically, it's going to be a steel mount on the bottom, and to the aluminum intercooler, steel and aluminum, like I've said before, don't mix. Just like on the Sport Quattro. So what am I going to do? Oh, I went out to the junk pile and I found on the bottom of a radiator, I think it's a Toyota, is these mounts right here. They're like a hard rubber, plastic, whatever mount. You know, kind of pliable. But the whole thing is, they are thick, and what it is they will isolate the vibrations from the engine to the intercooler. Great. So how am I going to attach it? Well, the first thing is I went down and I looked around, I looked in the bin, and I says, yeah, I pulled out a piece of roll cage tubing, just standard, whatever. Perfect. I mean, wow, you can't get a better fit than that. They don't jostle around. It's great. So how am I going to mount the intercooler to this, seeing how it doesn't have the actual plugs or the outcroppings for it to actually go in here? If you remember this is the aluminum that I chopped out of the 3D intake manifold. This was for the Audi wrench or whatever to go down inside there. But what is, I'm going to turn these down the lathe. I mean, I'll only have to turn them like a millimeter down. But utilize it, and I'll weld it to the bottom of the tank. And that way, well, the bottom of the intercooler somewhere. That way I can get that all set up, set the height up. And that way, it'll all be squared away. So the bottom on both sides will be stationary. And they will not, you know, I don't want the intercooler to kick out. Then we have to do the mounts on top. Same thing, we have to have isolators on them, but the intercooler can't move back and forth like this. That's, you know, that's one thing that's pretty important, and I'll show you here in just a little bit. Okay, let's first do the mount on the side where the power steering pump is. And let me bring you down there, and then we'll start doing that. Here we are underneath the car. What am I going to do? Well, here's the power steering pump. There's the belt and all that stuff. We have to do a couple things. First thing, I'm going to weld this right here as a snubber mount to a standard 4000. I think the 5000s also had them. Yeah, the 5000 should have had them. I'm not sure it's the exact same mount. And it also has, the Quattros had these mounts. And what they did was they had a front engine mount, which basically stopped the engine from flopping up and down like a dying fish. What am I going to do? It's a very stiff mount. I am going to weld this to the bottom. I marked this line on where I'm going to slice, where I'm going to bend it so it actually is flat. It'll go to the roll cage tubing, and then from the roll cage tubing back to the mount, so it makes a very, very stiff platform. Then I can, and we have to make sure it clears all the belts in this thing. The belt can be easily taken off. Like that, and hopefully it'll look like an original mount. almost, after I get cleaning all this up and welding everything. I think it's really, really stiff metal, so I think it'll work. I think it'll work fairly well. Let me cut this up or slice it so I can bend it, and then I can trim out what I want, and then we can get on to putting the roll cage tubing on it to make the very first mount. All right, this mount is basically initially set. I cut it just so, I mean, it's well within the lines of where I marked for where the tube's gonna go. I can always modify it, you know, not cut as much in or cut more, where I can move the tube in and out, no problem. I had to notch right down here because I messed up. I didn't see it touching because I thought it was fine, but that's beside the point. To notch that is easy. And I'm probably going to make a support bracket off the original bracket just to give it like a T shape, the T angle, just to make it really stiff. But it's actually pretty stiff right now. But as of course, I want to make it more difficult and put another supporting brace in there to guarantee it. All right, now we're going to work on this side of the motor. What am I going to do? Well, can bolt on to any 5-cylinder of this generation. You know, I'm talking about anything 1990, late 90s and before, I think, is when the last time they used this motor. I'm not talking about the 07K. I'm just talking about this generation of motors. Now, I need something to bolt onto the right side or passenger side right here that every single one has. Every single one of these motors has is a place for the snuggle right here. This right here is off of an Quattro and also a 5000. This is the alternator mount. What you'll find is the alternator is right here on the Quattros. It's over there on the 4000s. I used to take these off and put all the alternators over there on my Quattro just to get them away from the heat of the turbocharger. That's a big thing because it kind of cooked them. Other than that, that's kind of what I'm doing. So all I want to do is I want to use the 2 bolts that are right here that this mount bolts onto. That way I know every single one of these generations, I know I can bolt this mount on and off. Now, what am I going to use? Well, I found this right here. I chopped it up. Don't remember where the hell it came from. It's some type of mount, but for the most part, if I just slice it like right down here, we got ourselves a good base mount, and then I can run down and go right to it, no problem. It should be okay, you know, and yeah, I think that'll work. We'll see. We'll find out. But, let me cut this up, and I'll drill a hole right here for that side, bolt it in, and we will have a mount that comes down and over. Just an L bracket. That's all it is. So let me go grab my mask and cutter, and we'll just start doing this. Check this out. See, this is the existing bolt hole. This is the one I used. You know, very little play, very little room around where the washer, I have enough room to make sure the washer contacts the back or the majority of the plate for strength. If I bring it over here, right here is where I would have to cut it or we'll have to drill it, which means I'd have to take out all this material and not lessen the strength, but it just, you know, it doesn't look as strong to me. So what I'm going to do is use the other half of the mount like this, bolt it in, and weld it right there. I mean, actually, it looks kind of neat. Then I'll build off of this to make the other side mount for the intercooler. I think it's going to work. I mean, yeah, it is what it is. And I'll trim up everything right here after I'm done. But, you know, best laid plans. Let me put a bolt in here. What I'll do is I'll figure out what I need for just a bit of steel to run off of here to make it equal over there, so I can make it all work. I think I think it looks fine, you know, especially after I weld it. Oh, well, you have to remember, changing plans in midstream, that's what you got to do if you're going to be doing this stuff. So, all right, let me clean some of this stuff up so I can weld it, but also get some material that I can use to make the other side and make it work, you know, have it extend out so I can have the intercooler stuff all done, you know, the lower mounts. Let me bolt this in and we'll get this done. All right, I want to get just the rough mounts done. You know, it's not even near final, but just roughly in. And I want them roughly the same as in where the outcroppings are. What I did, this is, I think this is from a garage door or whatever. Basically locked it in between the two frame rails because the chassis is sitting on the dolly is not plumb. I tried using a level and it didn't work. Now, what I do is we have this mount that I just, cut up down here. We have this mount. I just want it roughly to that mount right there. And with the tape measure, and I measure it, it's, let's see, it's like 8 3/4 inches. I got this out of the junk pile. This was other half of the airbag mount. It's either for the Subaru or for a Mark III, something like that. And it had just enough drop down because I measured it before, and there's 8 3/4 right there as it stands, and that way it'll go right on, no problem. And it's pretty much exactly out as that one is as distance out from here. So it ought to work pretty well. I'm gonna go clean this thing up and I'll get the welder. I gotta trim this out first so I can get the bolt off, but I wanna weld this up and just tack this to it, and then I can go in back of it and weld it up pretty good. So I'll just cut this section out right here, bend it over, we'll make it work. That's all it is. Let's get to it so I don't dilly-dally. Here's roughly how it's going to sit. What we're going to do is we're going to try and make the least amount of work for us as possible from chopping up the intercooler. This is what you're going to do when you have junk parts. You try and figure out the least amount of cutting. Now, what's the first thing, we cut this. What's the first thing we have to do? We have to bring the intake from the turbocharger, or the intake to the intercooler, which is the pressure side out of the cold side from the turbocharger into the intercooler. Now, this thing is sitting way too high. If you sit there and look at this, when I cut this, I had to cut that tube, which is right over there, that went in here. So I had to cut this section. So we have to plate this. When we cut the top off, we have to plate this, we have to plate this. This right here is the only plate that theoretically we would not have to do. Yeah, we would have to cut it for the intake on this, but we're going to avoid that. What are we going to do? We're going to flip the intercooler upside down. We have to cut this side anyway. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this side, and I'm going to start using the other pipe from there to here. And we also want to get this thing as far over as possible. There's a reason for that. I'll show you here in just a second. Let me cut this off so we can start working on building the intake from the turbocharger compressor side into the intercooler. And this is the reason why I'm using these mounts the way I want to use these mounts, so it won't kick out. And let me cut this first, I'll show you what I plan on doing to make this thing work. So we only have to fabricate, 3 sides. 1, 2, and this is the 3rd side, which we have to do anyway in order to hook it up to the intake manifold. So, or the pressure charge pipe to the manifold. A lot of things to think about, but you're trying to make it as easy as possible. At least I am, because this is all just junk shit, and you know what? Maybe none of this is gonna work. I don't know, but at least I can put it up and just like, go to a real fabricator and say, hey, listen, fabricate me this intercooler exactly. All right. It's like, oh, here's $2,000. All right, oh, great. So, all right, let me cut this up, and then we can start working on figuring out what plates and how we're going to do the plating and all that stuff. And then the very last thing is going to be the mounts on the bottom, because I need to get that set up before everything else is set up. So, if you hear what I'm saying. All right, let me get my gear back on so I can cut this tube off, and we can make it all work out. Here we have the cut up intercooler. Yeah, it's roughly where it's supposed to be. What are we going to do for the compressor side to the intake of the intercooler? Well, we're going to use the same thing we used, or what was on this is this pipe right here, but we've got to shorten it. Also, what happens is if I do this, you'll have this pipe like that. This way, this is the coupler that'll go onto the turbocharger. In order to get it off, all you do is slide the coupler down and you pull it straight out. There's no restriction whatsoever. I got to lower this thing down a little bit to make it a little nicer looking, but that's beside the point. What it is all we have is just a straight coupler, no special hoses, no nothing. And if you ever get stuck at a rally and blow, and let's say this hose splits and you need to keep going, you can do a couple of things. First thing, you can wrap it in duct tape. It's because the thing is, it's not trying to hold the tubes together. All it's trying to do is hold the air pressure in. Or you can get a radiator hose, small, or any type of turbo hose that you can get on there that's 2-inch. And a radiator hose, there's 2-inch radiator hoses around, especially for old American cars. And you can just clamp it on it and go. And, will it last a long time? It's usually a shot in the dark. It might work, might not. Who knows? But at least it gets you going. And this car, most of the things they're ever going to do is a rally cross anyway. So fucking dirt parking lot shit, But that's beside the point. Let me, I got to first trim this pipe down as much as I can. And I'm going to start trying to file and fit to see exactly where this thing goes. And the good thing about having this with the mounts in the bottom is that, if you have the mount solidly put in the bottom, solidly up top, where this thing's not bouncing around, this thing is really, really stiff, and it's moving all as one unit. From the engine, turbocharger, everything's moving as one unit. That was kind of my goal. So let me mark this pipe and get my glasses and ear and paraphernalia back on. Start cutting this so I can warm up the TIG welder and start figuring out how this is going to work. Here's the intercooler tube that is in. It's in pretty much optimal position where it goes straight down, straight in. It's a little tight to the header. You know what? We'll worry about that with heat shielding later. And plus, the turbocharger might be being moved about just this much because I did get the flange in for the turbo. It's a 1/2 inch, but I'm going to try and make it exactly where the turbo is now because I like the placement of it. All right, we have the now, beside the point, we have the tube that's in. And what we have is we have the intercooler set at a certain position where where I originally wanted it. And if I have it like this where everything's bound up, it's going to go like halfway in between. So if it's going to go halfway in between, where this gap is, you know what? I think I'm going to raise the intercooler. And there's a reason why I'm going to raise the intercooler. If you take a look at this, this is the plate that I chopped off the top that I was going to use for the bottom plate. It's fine, and it's relatively stiff, but I think I want to build it up a little bit, and this is the reason why. Here, we'll put this right there. I got this. this is just some aluminum C-channel. What it will be, it'll make it a little bit stiffer. It'll give me a little bit more crush protection, if you want to call it, you know. But it's the main thing is it's stiffer. That'll go right here, and that'll raise the intercooler up, and it'll bring it a little bit up, further up into the radiator. I mean, to the grill. So, what I thought was kind of interesting is it'll make it look cooler. So, if I just do this, just put it right down here. It's gonna be roughly the same height. And it gives me a better surface to put my mounting tabs on. And it goes up to right here. The grill will sit right here. So we got about 1.5 inches, you know, from where the grill will sit. So we have this down here. Now that we have it down here, we're gonna have to build, we don't have to cut as much off of the intercooler, but we have to basically build a ramping system up into the intercooler from the bottom. What that does, it allows the air to flow a lot easier without as much disturbance. Now, if you get basically a lot of turbulence, if you crash into something head on and you go in and a 90-degree up, there's a lot of turbulence and the flow will be diminished. Because if you take a look at a river flows all nicely and it very rarely goes into something, you know, sideways and turns exactly at a right angle. Very, very rarely. So what we have to do is make a ramping system and have, you know, just slice this out a little bit, figure out exactly where we're going to cut, slice it, and then we can figure out by making a ramping system to go all the way onto everything. That way the flow comes in and goes up into the intercooler and flows out. I mean, you know what? Will it work? I do not know. It's theoretical at my best, but if we're going to be spending the time for the intercooler, we have to give ourselves the best shot we can possibly do. So, let's make this hillbilly recycling project, how can I put this? Let's see if we can actually make a recycling project that actually works. All right, there we go. All right, okay. Let me get my stuff on. I'm gonna start trimming this thing out, and then I'm gonna mark the pipe, cut that, and see if we can get kind of some semi-ramp system built up into the bottom part of the intercooler so we can start closing it up. Here we have the first cut. This is what I cut out of it. This is so it goes up inside, so I know where roughly it's going to be. This is roughly where it's going to, you know, where I have to bring down the tubing to mold in. That's fine. The good thing is, after cutting this piece out, I got a ramp that I can file and basically fit. As you can see the profile of it, it's going to go right here and scoop the air and go right up into the intercooler. That's what my plan is. Let me give it some more trim. Let's see what happens. I might have to bring the weld over here to tack it in. Not sure yet, but let me just trim up this next piece and we will see how far we can get without having to tack it in. This is pretty much how our ramp is going to go. So it's going to direct the flow of air like this into the intercooler. Let me clean this down, get another section of what I use for the end cap, and I can take out this section so it'll be easier for me to manipulate and clean that all up. That way I can start tacking it in. Well, it looks, I can't hold everything in position. I have to start tacking things in. I got to tack this thing right there. That's the first tack. At least it's stationary, and then clean this up and tack this in to know exactly where the air is going to channel in to that next. Let me go grab the TIG. Well, I'm going to clean this up a little bit. Just give a couple tacks, and then we will go from there. We can start, you know, I have to do a lot more trimming on this piece, but if we have it out a little bit, that's fine. But I have to have it in an absolute stationary position in order for me to figure out exactly where I'm going to tack it. That's the big thing. So, all right, let me go warm up the TIG and bring it over and have some fun. You know, I wouldn't suggest this to anybody. All right, I got a couple of good tacks on here. I can't see. Hopefully they hold while I'm looking around. I'm gonna have to. I bent this down without not being in the frame, but I got to slice it to bring it back up so I can seal the entire thing. Then I'll bring it over to the bench. I'll seal it up. That way it's very, very stationary. Then I can start building the directional plates, if you want to call it that, inside this, where I know it's not going to move around. So let me cut that and hopefully get it off without breaking those tabs. And we can get at least these two sections welded up. That way we can start the process of channeling air, seeing how we'll already seal one side. Bar going. What is that AVA guy? Dupla! Oh. Well, I was wondering why it looked like a volcano erupting inside there. Well, that's it. Well, we're going to briefly cut. I will probably come back in a couple of days to finish up the intercooler when I get some argon. And right now, I'm kind of at a standstill. All right, well, this is going to cut right to when this thing is coming back, and we'll have to get the argon, and we'll so close yet so far. All right, I'll see you in a second. Well, seeing how I don't have the argon, I started doing something else, and I said, you know what, I should film this. This is what I'm doing. This is the header. I cut the flange off because I'm going to put that other eBay flange on it. And what I'm doing is, you can take a look inside here. I've smoothed out every single thing that I can with the carbide tip tool. And now I'm going to fill all of those gaps, which is basically air, so this thing won't leak, with MIG weld, because I do have a steel mix argon left. But if I can fill all of that, then I'm going to go with the grinder back in there and grind out everything, so everything is basically a smooth flow into that flange. I mean, is it, perfect? No, but I'm going to try and make sure there's no obstructions whatsoever inside the entire system, At least there's ones that I can control by myself. So that's kind of the whole deal. Let me, I got to do a little more grinding right here, to grind this tube down. But other than that, we have, yeah, that's pretty much it. So let me go get let me go get the MIG, and I'll start welding this thing up. Well, I think I've gotten all my screw-ups. Basically, when I had it on the head to make sure it wouldn't go, there are certain places it's really hard to get. And having it off the cylinder head, now I can flip it around. And you see, all the weld that's inside here, it seals it up. Now I got to take the grinder and actually make everything smooth. That's the big thing. After I make everything smooth, then I'm going to open up these holes right here with the step drill, and then use the grinder to clean it up and bring them into, how can I put this, into match porting territory, you know? That way we can get this back on, put the flange on it, you know, I'll take, you know, put everything back on, and when I have the argon for the intercooler, I can get that all squared away. So let me go get the die grinder and start to work on this. There it is. Pretty much all I did was, I don't want to touch it because it's kind of hot, is clean out any passage or any restriction from the tube going in. And I'm not really worried too much about the extra buildup right there. I might clean it up a little bit, but I don't think so. But what it is when I had the flange on there, I have to go back in there and clean it up a little bit more anyway after I weld it all in. But it's, you know, it's pretty much a straight shot. I got pretty much all the slag, all that stuff done. I mean, seeing how I don't have very much time in it, the main thing was I wanted to get everything sealed up inside. And, you know, is it match ported? Absolutely not. But it's, you know, logically, it's just no restriction per pipe. That's the only thing. Now, what I'm going to do next is, you know what? I think I'm going to throw this back on the car and get the flange all squared away and get that set up, because I won't do I won't do these, but you know, who cares? And as you can see, there's plenty of material I got out of that, you know. But I mean, you know, logically it looks kind of cool. Whether or not it's going to work is another thing, but you know, I'm not you know, I shouldn't even have done it because I'm only, what am I trying to get, 250 horsepower out of this thing? But yeah, whatever. All right, let me go throw this back on the car, and I'm going to put the intake manifold back on so I can put the flange on, get that set up, so hopefully I can get some argon tomorrow to do the rest of the intercooler and get that all squared away. That's, you know, that's kind of a big thing, but let me go throw this back on the car, and I will continue on. All right, it's a couple days later, got the argon. Boy, that shit's going. Everything is so much more expensive now. Wow. But whatever, you know, it is what it is. What it is, I got to use a die grinder to clean up all the excess garbage here. I got to clean up my non-gassed welds or attempted welds on the bottom and re-weld it, you know. Also on this side, I'm going to make a plate that goes up here to allow the air to come in and just, you know, just flow this way. You know, just trying to make it, and I got to slice this all down and grind it all down so I can make it flat, so the piece, I can weld it to right there. You know, it'll all be coincided, so it'll seal up. That's a big thing. All right, let me get my stuff on so I can start grinding up all this stuff, and let's making it work so we can put it back on the car and start fitting everything. that's where I want it. This is pretty much where I want it. I have enough room to get the alternator belt off. I put 2 tacks in on the flange for the turbocharger, the new flange I got off of eBay. This right here, I turned this side right down on the lathe. I did on that piece, I turned both sides down, and because I knew when I cut this side it was going to be all cattywampus. So, but right now I just have to sit there and I'm going to trim it up just a little bit, but we're underneath, because when I'm looking from here to here, we have to be underneath the grill. And the grill sits on top of here, so if it's going to be really good. So what I got to do is I got to bring this up, and I will tack this in so I can pull out this jack stand, and then make sure this one's all squared away. So, and make sure everything is straight too. Yeah, yeah, that should be good right there. Let's grab my welding helmet. Well, there it is. Pretty much straight up and down. Should be clearing. I think it looks pretty good. All right, the last thing we got to do is we got to build the intake pipe. Well, what are we going to do it out of? Well, I have this. I cut this for some reason, don't know why, but what will it do for us? Well, first thing is, this right here has a port or a nipple on it. What it will do, I will put it next to the throttle body. It gives me a port to go into the intake manifold for the idle stabilizer valve. That's pretty much what I wanted. You know, don't know what else I can say about that, but I can put it either here or here. I mean, it doesn't matter, but at least I have a port. I don't have to weld it on anything. And plus, I ground off all these welds because my welding is atrocious, especially after I found a broken seal in the welder. I wonder why they were so atrocious. All right, well, what are we going to do? We have to get from here to here. We have this pipe right here. And I'm looking at it going, all right, well, if I cut it right here, I'm going to have to extend it a little bit. But, you know, it's not going to be that bad. What I'm going to do is pretty much just have it like this, you know, and have it go in there. I think I'm going to use one of the old pipes that I have here, maybe as an extension. We'll see what happens. But let me get my goggles and stuff on, and we will cut this exactly where I want it to go into here. So probably right about here. But hold on, let me grab my stuff and we can cut this up. We have our simulated hoses, aka duct tape, and painter's tape. ah, you know what? I like this. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, it's something that most people would throw away. Like I said, you know, I might as well hack it up and see what I can do. And I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty proud with it because I got one hose on the turbocharger, and I had two small hoses, if I had them, on the charge pipe. And plus, I have a place for my idle air stabilizer. You know, it's really, this is actually really a cool thing or a big leap forward because I didn't know how this is actually going to work. I mean, if I didn't, I can't weld the rest of it right now because I'm almost out of argon. There's something really wrong with my TIG welder. The welds that are on here are just atrocious. And the thing just went through a bottle of 80Q bottle of argon, and it's just like no machine does that. So there's something wrong with it. I'm probably going to go with a Miller. I think I ought to replace it, but we'll see what happens. Other than that, thank you very much for showing up. Remember, none of this is hard. In one side, out the other. Pretty basic. Whatever you have lying around, make it work. You know, I'm just a hillbilly here in New Hampshire, and just trying to build something cool for no money. You know, and the only problem is I didn't use any Eurovan seat in it. It's like, I'll try next time. All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you showing up. Remember, you can do this. I am nothing special whatsoever. All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next one. Bye now.